Hello, 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 and welcome back to the first virtual player networking event. This is actually the 21st annual player networking event. And just like everybody else in the world that had to pivot and change course, this event has done the same thing. We're coming to you live with hard-hitting, informational, valuable interviews here on the PNE platform. And our guest for this segment is Dr. Herb Barton. You all see his handsome face there on the screen. Dr. Herb is the president of the Peak Performance Consulting Group. He has practiced as a staff psychologist, executive coach, and organizational and sports psychology consultant over the last 2 decades. Dr. Martin has been instrumental in the design, development, and implementation of several successful programs for athletes, executives, and professional teams. He serves as the Western Regional Evaluating Clinician for the NFL's program for substance of abuse since its inception in 1993, and as a part of the league-wide efforts to improve conduct-related incidents among players. Dr. Herb has also developed and he conducts regular life skills programs and trainings on a team basis. He is also, because we're not done with his resume yet, he is also the team clinician for the Los Angeles Chargers. Dr. Herb Barton, this is such an honor to have this conversation with you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for saying yes to be a part of the first virtual player networking event.
Well, it's certainly my pleasure, and anything that Guy's involved with, I want to be a part of. So I appreciate that, Moniek. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm the same. Whatever Guy's on, I'm going to be with it too.
That's what we all do, right?
So with everything that you have going on, I know that leadership is such a huge part of your journey and how you operate in all of these roles that you fill. And I can imagine, especially in your circle of influence and in your area of expertise right now, it's the word is coming up a lot more. I know for me, and as an entrepreneur, we hear it a lot. It's being used a lot more, given the really charged environment that we're in and the challenging conversations that we're having to have right now. So from your perspective, from your professional opinion, why do you think this conversation about leadership is coming up so much more often? And what should athletes understand and recognize about their roles as leaders?
Okay, that's a great question. First of all, I think given the charged environment that we are, is a very stimulating environment with respect to leadership. I mean, and leadership affects everything that we do. And certainly in sports, for athletes and for all the young athletes on board here today, it is critically important that you recognize not only what's happening in the world, but what's happening within your team. And you'll play a role in that. And so as leaders, whether it's someone that just helps to bring books in or whatever the case may be, it's taking responsibility. And responsibility is an important part of leadership, right? And so leadership affects not only the direction of the team, the culture of the team, your role on the team, and your future on the team. So it becomes extremely important, I believe, for you to understand the whole concept as it relates to leadership. I think a lot of times people think of it as something that's out there, but it can be something as simple as taking responsibility, as I alluded to before. It could be following the leader. So there's individuals that have influence that may be in a role or position as a coach or a general manager or assistant coach or whatever the role might be. And they may take charge, but you will have a role as well. And so finding that connection between those individuals, understanding what they do, what their role is in relationship to yours is very, very important. So
I love that you really summed it up. If we had to assign a very simple definition of leadership, it's assuming responsibility, right? It's easy, especially in a team environment, talking about athletes, to say, oh, well, that's somebody else's job. That's not my job. So in your experience with working with athletes and really being in that in that NFL environment, what do you think general managers and coaches would be looking for? Say, for instance, if we've got a high school player, a college player, somebody that wants to elevate their level in professional sports and also recognizes that there is room for them to assume responsibility and operate as a leader in their spaces. What qualities would be ideal for them to start working on and nurturing in themselves so that they'll be more palatable or more acceptable and stand out for somebody that might be a coach or a team owner, general manager?
Absolutely. So, I mean, for starters, I mean, baseline, honesty and integrity. So, what does that mean for the young athletes on here? Doing what you say you're going to do, following through, being consistent, respecting authority, recognizing power, which is a whole another complex discussion, but understanding that in order for the ship to to row, there are certain things that you have to do, and there's certain things you need to understand. So I think the ability to also look beyond yourself. And so selflessness is a word that I think about a lot. And so you have to look beyond yourself because it's a team game, particularly when we're talking about football. So there's so many parts. And so it's important for you to understand what those parts are. And those qualities are often things that coaches will talk directly and indirectly about. So one of the things that I observe a lot of times with coaches that I've worked with, in their description of players, they'll say, he's a good guy. I mean, he's a good guy. And, and that means a whole lot. And the way I sort of operationalize a good guy is somebody that I can trust, someone that's going to follow through, someone that's going to be on time. So time is extremely important. And I'm, like I was on this thing 10 minutes early because I don't want to make sure that I made sure that I was on time, right? Just with technology. But if you're late, there's rules and there's coaches that'll say, if you're 10 minutes early, that's 10 minutes too late. Because not only do you have to be there, but you have to be there and be mentally prepared.
Yes.
For whatever is in front of you. And so I think for many of the athletes that I've worked with that have been extremely successful, they've learned these things. They've been conditioned over time. They become pattern behavior that is reflected in not only the way they prepare, but also in the way that they execute. So as a coach or as a GM, I would say, and even for someone in my role, I want people that understand the importance of that or embrace that importance or willing to accept that. I think another quality that coaches are often looking for are individuals that can accept criticism, can accept difference. And what I mean, let me give you an example. Coach yells at you and you say, man, that's disrespectful. And it might be disrespectful, but I think it's important to be able to understand what is the coach's intention. And sometimes that's hard to always understand, but I think it's something for you to try to get an understanding of. Is that something that's limited to me, or is that something that goes on across the board? But as a player, because generally as a player, you're in somewhat of a subservient role. You have a responsibility to understand what is the message. And if you stay on task and your goal is to help the team, and even if the goal is simply to do what you need to get to your next spot, then it's important for you to understand the message. And also that has to do with what I talked about earlier in culture. And so I think coaches are looking for those qualities, and they will say it in many different ways, in many different coded ways. And if you're fortunate enough, in some cases, as in the criticism that I just alluded to, a coach will be direct with you, and he'll say, "This is what I need from you, Herb. This is what I need from you, Monique. This is what we do." And I think a lot of young players get confused about that and sometimes misled about the message, and they personalize it. And I think that that's a challenge sometimes because you have to look at it in the broader terms of what is the coach's mission and what is the value. And so it's really important to pay attention to words, because words have tremendous power and tremendous meaning. And so for all of the young players listening today, if there's a mission statement, if the coach says this is what we're doing this year, really try to understand what that means. Talk to your position coaches about what that means. Talk to the direct coach, talk to your principal, talk to the players that were before you, that might be senior to you, and try to find out what that means.
So good.
That is great. So I want to ask you something here. What are some challenges that come with leadership?
Thank you. You know, when I talked about selflessness, the inverse of that is being selfish. And I think we all have identified or seen players or known players that, you know, it's about them. And those players sometimes can be very, very talented players. But those players I have found in my experience at the pro level don't last long. You know, people put up with them, they end up getting traded. You know, there's guys that have been first round picks and they've been traded, you know, 2 or 3 times. And it's generally not about their ability, but it's their inability to understand the bigger picture. I think there's some other things. I mean, just fundamentally getting caught up. I know that sounds really, really weird, but it's really true. You know, there are a lot of guys that get so involved in outside events off the field that it interferes with their ability to understand what the broader goal is of the team. And so whether you're a leader or not a leader, you are part of a system. So again, that's why it's extremely important to understand what that system is about. In football and basketball and in most sports, it's a system. And it's important to realize that what your role is in that system. So I think everyone should understand that, and particularly leaders should understand that. So if you're identified as a leader, to answer your question, I think it's important to realize your responsibility and accountability and purpose in this entire system. So those are just some of the thoughts that I have. You know, guys, I guess a similar relationship to that is pride, you know, like, you know, I often ask players and I often ask people this question, you know, how do you want to live? Which is a broad question. But I ask athletes, how do you want to live for these next 3 or 4 years while you have this opportunity of a lifetime? And I would say the same is true for the collegiate athletes on the Zoom right now. What do you want this to look like? Why is this important to you? How will this change your life? What sacrifices will you have to make? So that's another question, because sometimes guys don't want to make the sacrifice. But for every athlete that I've worked with, from college to pros, the ones that have been most successful are the guys that work the hardest. The guys that I know that are all pros, they're the first one in the building and the last to leave. And what I tell young players, if you want to be Derwin James or guys of that sort, they're working all the time. They might be working out right now. And that's what it takes. It takes sacrifice. And a lot of guys aren't willing to do that because they may be blessed, but they don't realize that the game requires more than just athletic prowess.
That's very true. That's so true. And then another question I was thinking about, so what are some of the benefits of having other leaders on your team? You know, whether that's coworkers or the actual athletes. How do you think that benefits?
Yeah, well, you know, I think the more the leaders, as long as people can come to agreement about it, the better, because I think what leadership fosters is cohesion. It facilitates the vision that is important. I think some of the other benefits are buy-in, motivation, shared goals, and purpose. And I think ultimately, when there's alignment with all of those things, then you're more likely to have success, whether it's on the field or off the field or in relationships. I think those same things hold true. And the reason why I mention relationships, because I think that a lot of times players will say, well, man, I don't control this. It's out of my control. You know, there are things that you can do and begin doing even at home. There's things you can do in your relationships with your significant others. There's things you can do at home in relationship to your families to practice these leadership skills, to be responsible, to be accountable, to be on time, to, if you tell your girlfriend you're gonna be somewhere, be on time. Mm-hmm. These are all of these are behaviors and qualities that we alluded to before that I think enhance a relationship. And I hadn't mentioned the importance of relationships and leadership, but I think that that is an extremely important part of being successful, is to recognizing the importance and the currency of a relationship as being a member of a team.
Yeah.
That's so good, Dr. Herb. You know, so much of what you were talking about, one of the things that you said, what I heard was,
Yeah, Cal, I'm probably gonna have to take it over. You're gonna try to refresh, your signal
we've got
is
some
really bad
interference
in
somewhere.
Tampa. So it must be a lot of people.
That's Mr. Truth on there.
Those 5G towers, because, you're cutting up, so see if you can, work.
Okay.
Okay.
Can y'all hear me? Okay. So one of the things that what you were saying, what I heard was leadership creating that environment for other leadership. You know, when you're in an environment that is nurturing and is supportive, but also has a level of accountability to it, you know, and calls you to rise,
Right.
it allows others to step up and to grow as leaders as well. So I love that you reference, you know, practicing that when the stakes are low, you know, in the practicing when when you're in a relationship with your significant other, you know, and you're not married yet, you know, when the stakes are low, because it's through that process that we grow. Those skills have to be practiced.
Yeah.
They
No,
have to be practiced. Nobody gets to the big game, you know, to keep it on the sports analogy. Nobody gets there without having practiced and drilled themselves so that they can perform on that level. So I love that you know, kind of tied that up so well, because it does, we're presented with opportunities to lead all the time.
absolutely.
And we just, athletes, non-athletes, whatever, we get the opportunity to recognize that we are in an opportunity and choose to step in it and, you know, really practice those leadership skills.
I so appreciate what you're saying. For example, all of the individuals that have taken this time out right now to do that, that's a leadership move. You know, learning is part of leadership. You know, sharing this information when you go back, incorporating that in your life, as I alluded to before, with respect to people in your life. So, you know, many of the athletes on this Zoom right now will become the leaders within their family system. They may be not only leaders on their team, but they'll be leaders in their family system. If they come to the pro level, they are ultimately going to be saddled with a whole bunch of requirements, accountability, responsibility, and leadership. And they're going to have to execute the kinds of things that we're talking about now in their lives in order to be successful long term. Because if you can't manage those things that we've just talked about, then it will eventually affect your performance on the field.
So good. So good. This has been an amazing conversation, Dr. Herb. I am so grateful to be a part of this, to participate in this with you. Where can viewers watching, whether they're live or on the replay, find out more about the great work that you're doing, connect with you, get leadership support, get leadership counsel and advice? Where can they find you?
Well, that is so kind. I live in San Diego, California, but I'd be more than happy to share my information. My phone number, and you can call me directly, is 858-945-8493. That's 858-945-8493. I'm on the phone all day, all the time, even at night, because that's what I do, right? And I've been very, very blessed to be able to do that. And I feel very fortunate to have met both of you as well today. So.
Well, I'm gonna take the liberty of speaking for Sabryna, but she can definitely say this. The honor has totally been ours. This has been such a refreshing, engaging, thought-provoking conversation. Thank you so much, you know, for the work that you're doing in this world and creating future leaders, because we definitely, the situations that we're in right now definitely is showing us we need more of it.
So true.
We need more of it. So thank you so much, Dr. Herb.
Thank you very much, Moniek and Sabryna. All of you, take care. We hope to see you sometime in the future.
Yes, thank you,
yes.
Dr. Herb.
All right, see you later. See you later now.
See
Bye-bye.
ya.
Bye-bye.